at 7 o'clock. Noting the hour in the presence of a quorum, I would like to call the April 12th, 2021 meeting of the Acton Select Board to order. The town of Acton, in response to the coronavirus pandemic, is currently following the guidance from the Acton Board of Health, the Massachusetts Department of Health, and the CDC. The town hall is closed to the public. This meeting will be streamed online on the ActonTV YouTube live channel, and audio will be broadcast live on the radio on WAEM 94.9 FM. To participate remotely from a computer, use the link to join the public meeting, actonma.gov/meeting/BOS, or from a telephone dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *9 to request to speak. Computer and app users may use the raise the hand feature to request to speak. Matt Murphy, who's our facilitator, are there any hands up for citizen concerns?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, we do have one hand. First is going to be from Alyssa Nickel. Alyssa, you should be able to speak.
Good evening, this is Alyssa Nickel from School Street. At last week's meeting, a few of my fellow Acton citizens called for the suppression of diverse voices. The same people who complain that diversity of thought isn't tolerated in Acton suggested that our elected government leaders put a stop to the expression of opinions which diverge from those of the establishment. The same people who are outraged by the alleged silencing of voices in our schools, community, and on social media are ironically calling for the silencing of voices. I heard a leader would have put a stop to it. At what cost would we put a stop to robust debate on social media during a time when face-to-face, candid conversation between community members is difficult, if not impossible? What kind of leader would dare take this on? Are my fellow Acton citizens calling for strongman politics? It is not fierce debate, but authoritarian leadership, which has no place in local governance. The problem with calling for a stop to the open critique of our elected officials' record in the name of civility is that it interferes with both our constitutional rights and the disruption of injustice. As a private entity, Facebook can censor speech on its platform, but state legislators cannot, nor can any local governing body, including this board. Accusations of spreading lies and vicious untruths were leveled at the citizens of Acton. These are serious allegations, and they were made without presenting any evidence. There was even a suggestion that citizens were inciting hate, another very serious allegation, again, made without providing evidence. I agree a handful of comments on Facebook were unkind, but the vast majority were opinions and criticisms accompanied by the candidates' own statements, videos, quotes in the Beacon, and emails. While some suggest this citizen dialogue was filled with mischaracterizations and words that were taken out of context, perhaps instead there are simply different interpretations and opinions on what matters and what is an appropriate approach to addressing the issues that face our community. While there were a few who called on this board to condemn the free expression of citizens, a right protected by the United States Constitution, I call on this board to instead denounce the slanderous accusers themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Are there any other citizen concerns? All speakers will be limited to strictly 3 minutes.
Yes, we do have comment from Kelly Stowe. Kelly, you should be able to speak.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kelly Stowe, and this is actually the first board meeting that I've attended because I'm a relatively new resident of the town. One thing that I noticed about the town, which we did move here last May in the middle of the pandemic, was that there is a lack of a community center, which I think is a major oversight. There's a huge opportunity to offer a community center to this very diverse, growing community. Another thing that I found recently was an article, or actually it was a master's thesis, I believe, for an individual who actually wrote about the tremendous growth of Acton over the last several decades in comparison to surrounding communities. And I've done a little bit of research on this, and I saw that there are also there's many of the surrounding communities have some sort of a community center. Perhaps not as grand or exciting as I might hope to see, but still some form of a community center. And so I heard that the board is putting together a 10-year capital plan, and I would request that the board consider putting a community center into that 10-year capital plan to serve the very diverse and growing community here in Acton. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right, next up is going to be from Melissa Brown. Melissa, you should be able to speak.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Brown and I live on Great Road. I'm calling to express frustration with the remarks from the chair at the April 5th meeting. It was deeply irresponsible and ultimately reprehensible to call out the names of 3 women of color in our community to assign blame and responsibility for the so-called bullying that occurred in the run-up to the election. I wish you realized that doing so puts them at greater risk for harassment and racial targeting, verbal attacks, vandalism, even physical harm. That you remain seemingly unaware of the experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color throughout the country and within our community evidences the very reason for our frustration in organizing. A majority of voters in this community decided we would not tolerate racism in the ongoing propagation of white supremacy culture. I implore you to cease doing so for the remainder of your tenure on the board. Stop Asian hate. Black Lives Matter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, next up, we're going to hear from Scott Smyers. Scott, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. On March 15th, the Board of Selectmen meeting, there were no public comments at the start of the meeting. And my review of the recording many times does not have any public comments at the beginning of the meeting. I was waiting to make a comment, so I waited longer than usual. And at about 9 minutes in, David Martin interrupted the discussion to allow Ginny Kramer, a school committee member, who reviewed out loud a several-year-old open meeting law violations that had nothing to do with the topics at the moment. This appeared to be a political ambush unrelated to the topic being discussed. After that, no more public comments were allowed. I had my hand raised. I was not called on. The next meeting, Mr. Martin was no longer the comment moderator. Was this action by Mr. Martin and Ms. Kramer planned? Is this why Mr. Martin was relieved of his duties to moderate the callers? Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, next up, we're going to hear from Corin Hogseth. Corin, you should be able to speak.
Hi, I just want to follow up on the offer from Mr. Mangiarotti last week to send me the list of participants in the Visions campaign, or Visions meeting. I sent it several emails and I never heard back.
John?
Good evening. I didn't receive any emails from the caller.
I sent them to the manager at, Acton Mass email. I sent it. It's the address that's on the webpage for your office. So.
Okay. Well, if perhaps you could call and give your email address. I did get requests for that list, but not from you. So I'm happy to provide it.
Okay. I will. I'll follow up tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, I believe, David, you had public comment you wanted to make as well.
Yes, I'm David Martin. I'm on High Street. Some people have been complaining recently about the tone of conversation in town. However, the complaints have been very one-sided. While I don't believe that Acton is a racist community, denying that racism exists is itself aggressive speech. Excusing the racist actions of others is offensive. Does anyone think that hearing "there is no racism here" is supposed to be comforting to the Chinese women who've had ethnic slurs yelled at them on our streets? When someone excuses the racist comments made by some of the mascot supporters, is it reasonable for those targeted to take offense? When someone says, oh, he didn't mean anything bad by that, or he's just a kid, or it's just name calling, is that supposed to make everyone feel at ease? When there are public comments objecting to any action the town takes towards racial justice, how are we supposed to take that? After being told that it reinforces racism, if someone defends being colorblind, isn't that racist itself? When someone refuses to acknowledge racism, how are folks supposed to react? Some have pointed to instances of people being called racist as attacks on their character. Personally, I prefer not to label people, but how are folks supposed to react to those who deny and excuse racism? Such comments certainly do not come to the claimed level of organized character assassination. Actions and words by elected officials about racism are justifiable reason to vote. It is beyond ironic that an elected official espousing sensitivity has made personal public attacks on our school superintendent, our state senator, members of our school committee, and community residents. This is inappropriate and unacceptable. I would love to see an improved tone of community conversation, but efforts are not in good faith if they use a one-sided justification by pointing only to the folks who advocate against racism. Thank you.
Are there any further public citizen comments, Matt?
We do have a few, yes.
Sure.
We're going to hear next from Colin User. If you can identify who you are and where you're from, that would be great.
Hi, it's Jack from West Acton. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I agree with most of what I've heard, and I hope we can move towards a more collaborative society. I really do. I have a lot of faith. I feel like diversifying the board is a good step, and I hope that we can be humble about our privilege and move towards a more inclusive society. I also agree with Kelly. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Community center, yes, yes, yes. 10-year plan, let's do it. By having a place that we can all gather, maybe that'll help us get to know one another and to learn about each other and our cultures, etc. And I was going to have a couple of concerns, or just actually a question and a concern. So the new email for the Board of Selectmen, is that the BOS at that's going to still work forever, or do we switch to SB at?
John?
They both work.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing is that I was on a call with somebody, a group the other day, and someone mentioned that their husband was a veteran and had never heard from the Veteran Services Officer of the town. And so I don't need an answer on that. I was just going to express that concern for someone who couldn't make it tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tara. Give me 1 second. I apologize. All right. Next up, we're going to hear from Rebecca Wilson. Rebecca, you may speak.
Hi there. I'm Rebecca Wilson. I'm on Wingate Lane. Hopefully you guys can hear me. This is my first time calling in. I see a nod, so that's good. Thank you for giving me a moment to speak. First and foremost, I wanted to express my support for the people that were named by Mr. Benson in the last meeting. I also want to say that by naming these community members, they've been made targets. And I think we can all understand the inherent danger in that. We should be uplifting and protecting each other. And I agree that there is a tone to the discourse in town that's deeply problematic. There's a pernicious idea going around that certain people are ruining the town. And I've lived here since 1999. I've gone through the school system. I love it here. So I chose to stay here and raise my family here. And I don't appreciate those deeply hurtful sentiments. You know, I think I speak for a lot of us when I say that we want this to be a welcoming town. We want businesses to move here. We want this to just continue to be a great place and get even better. And I don't think that that's should be a scary thing to say, that we can get better. We can have change. It can be good. And we can all unify behind that, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we just have a few more to get through.
Sure.
Christopher Hardy, you're up next.
Yes, this is Chris Hardy off of Great Road. I want to be in full support of the community center that's being proposed or talked about. I think it can be a great thing to bring people together of all races and ethnicities and create a diverse and inclusive community. That's all I have to say. I just want to support the Acton Community Center.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Last comment is from another call-in user. If you could just let us know who you are and where you're from, that would be appreciated. Should be able to speak.
Muted.
Yep, you're currently muted.
Is it star five that the caller should hit, or what's the number that this should hit?
I believe it is *5 to unmute. Okay. I'll leave this at the chair's discretion on if you want to give them another second.
Sure. We'll wait. Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. Okay, so we're up to item 2 under regular business, the beginning with the chair's update. I had a statement to make. I'll do here. The select board received a letter from Kira Wilson Cook that I apologized to her for naming her among others who posted untruthful statements about me on Facebook during the recent town election. Kira was included because her actions were, in the current parlance, malicious silencing. In the closing days of the election campaign, a well-regarded supporter of mine posted a list of some 30 current and past town leaders who had endorsed me. The endorsement prompted the response, quote, "John never reached out to people of color." My supporter replied, "John had supported Kira." Immediately thereafter, my supporter heard from her rabbi, Mike Rothbaum, that Kira was offended because her permission to use her name in the post was not requested. An apology was sought along with the taking down of the comment portion of the post. John had supported Kira. My supporter acquiesced. The real issue appeared to be Kira's concern over the public's knowledge of my support of her candidacy for the school committee in 2020. In January of this year, Vivian Burchell of ActonTV asked if I would sit for an interview on her show as chair of the Acton Select Board to discuss town issues. I agreed, and the interview took place on Thursday, January 28. The topics covered included the role of the Select Board, the future of the Kmart parcel, the pandemic, and the recent property tax increases. The final question in the interview was, what have I done for Black members of the community? I responded this way with some clarification here. As our select board meeting was adjourning on February 3, 2020, I noticed Kira Wilson Cook, then a candidate for the school committee, was in the audience. I went over to Kira, introduced myself, and invited her up to meet the other select board members. Kira was introduced to Joan, Dean, Peter Berry, and David Martin, whom she already knew. Kira and I chatted, and I suggested we meet for coffee. Kira agreed, and we met at Legends Cafe on February 11. By my account, the conversation was very upbeat, easy, and free-flowing. I told Kira I wished to support her school committee candidacy and said it was important for her and all of us that she be elected and become Acton's first Black school committee member. In furtherance of my support for her candidacy, I gave Kira a check for $250, which she graciously accepted. I added that my wife, Pam Lynn, a retired 45-year teacher and department head at AB, would be pleased to meet and discuss the AB system with her. Kira and Pam subsequently met for the better part of 2 hours, with Kira taking notes. About a week after our Legends Coffee, Kira called to say her school committee race was now uncontested and would I want my contribution back. Pausing briefly, I suggested relationship building is a key for elected officials, and she used the money to get to know the school committee, the select board, and finance committee over coffee and lunch. Kira and I met again for coffee in May and had a Zoom conversation in August. Both conversations from my end were upbeat and positive. Virginia Burchell, a Black woman, posted
Point of
the
order,
interview.
Mr. Chair, is this really appropriate for a select board meeting?
Yes, it
This is
is.
in the public comment period. This is not appropriate.
No,
No, it's
David,
really not appropriate.
I take your comment. I will finish my statement.
I will move to overrule the chair.
Well, good. I'm continuing on.
You have to take that motion and we have to vote on it. I move to overrule the chair that this is inappropriate for a select board meeting.
Okay.
Does anybody second?
There's no second. I'll continue on. Thank you. Virginia Burchell, a Black woman, posted the interview on the Racial Justice for Black Lives Matter Facebook page. RJ4BL subsequently took Vivian's interview with me down. Kira, I'm sorry, no apology is in order. It's disappointing the future working relationship I anticipated went so badly off the tracks. A few comments in closing. We are badly divided as a town. This anecdote underscores the depth of the division. Late in the day on town election day, I was standing with Xuan Kong on the tennis court side of the junior high school. I noticed a Fran Arsenault supporter holding a sign and asked that she join us. The individual responded, quote, "It would be conversing with the enemy." I replied, "Come on, we're all Actonians." The individual replied, "This is civil war." Think about it. A civil war over an essentially a volunteer position. Second, I would recommend to everyone to read the first 2 chapters of the recent book, How Democracies Die. Norms and guardrails are concepts all of us need to understand. And third, let's get back to the work of local government. Town meeting is in 2 months. We have town and school budgets and capital requests to pass. That's where our intention needs to go, and we can do it and do it well. Thank you. So with that, John, the town manager's update, please.
Thank you. A few items. First, a programming note. Number 8 on your agenda tonight is an item that was a placeholder, and that's not going to be heard tonight. So if anybody's waiting for that, it'll be on the 26th of April. So apologize for that. Secondly, I just wanted to mention the new program that we started with the police department this year. It's described briefly in the budget book, but this year, Chief Burrows and I worked on a reorganization of the department, a minor one. There was a vacancy, and we used it, the chief used it to create a new liaison division. And this is a division that, community policing and the police department is all about reaching out and engaging. But this is a division where there's now going to be leadership of the department who helps oversee all the people that work in those community engagement roles, like the SROs and the jail diversion person and the family resource officers. In addition to having those resources out there in the community, we will have now a leadership position in the department to help oversee them. And we're the reason why I mentioned it tonight is that Chief Burrows and his team will be doing a couple presentations over the next month or so to different groups in town to try to reach out and begin that community engagement. So any further questions, I think we can have Chief Burrows in to talk more about it. I just wanted to mention that. Other note, we issued 3 RFPs in the last few months. 3 projects out and no responses on 2 of them, and only 1 response on the 3rd. So we did get 1 response for someone that's interested in turning the 26 Carlisle vacant tax possession property into affordable housing. So I can bring that to the board for you to review at a future meeting. I'll talk with the chair about what makes sense. And the other 2, one was 3 School Street. This is the 3rd time now that we've tried to find someone interested in that, and it didn't work out. I'm not going to give up on it, but I understand if the board wants to take a little break on that for now. And 4 Piper Lane, this is the house that we acquired with the open space off Piper Lane. We put out a bid to see if anyone was interested in moving that house for their own use. And since no one is interested, we've already worked with the Historic Commission, and I believe they've already approved the demo delay demo permit. And we will now figure out how to accomplish that demolition in the next few months. So, other note, the dispatch presentation that we had with the town manager of Concord and police chiefs from both towns a few months ago, we haven't heard back from the state on that grant, but I am working with Stephen Crane, my counterpart in Concord, on what a governance agreement would look like. And our goal is to get that in front of each board in May, hopefully, for your review and comments. And we're also each working with the unions involved in that discussion. So, and finally, I just wanted to mention that an interdepartmental team started meeting today to look at taking a strategic approach to utilizing the funding that we're getting from the American Rescue Plan. And the goal of the working group is to generate ideas and strategic planning thoughts to bring to the select board soon to give you an initial update and overview and see what kind of direction the board wants to provide for us moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. Member minutes, Jim?
Sure. I had 2 things. First, a short one from the Water District. Let's see. Yeah, so we're in a drought. And like in most summers, there are watering restrictions. In this case, the summer watering program has been implemented with 1 day a week allowed for irrigation, like you're irrigating your lawn, and 3 days a week allowed for other outdoor water use, like your garden and so on. It's unclear, because we're in a drought, how long even this level can be sustained. So stay tuned. There may be other water restrictions applied. The use of water for lawns is an amazingly high percentage of the water that we use in Acton. So anything you can do to reduce that is very welcome. Thank you. The other thing is, I wanted to appreciate David for clarifying that his statement was done in citizens' concern, and I might have done exactly the same thing if I thought it through. But I have a statement that is along that same lines. It's been a very enlightening few days since the last meeting. I've had conversations and exchanges with a few of the folks that called in with concerns, with people in John and Fran's campaign, and some trusted former board members, among others. I'm left with a strong sense that we on the board and other elected officials have some heavy rowing to do to steer away from the temptations of blaming others that just deepens divisions and get us back towards finding ways to work together. As a board, we do have important work to do, as John noted, including making decisions and recommendations about affordable housing, continuing to review and influence decisions about the Kmart parcel, cooperating with the school committee, and doing what we can to undo the various ways that past and current racial prejudice distorts our political process. And all of these require deep conversations between people who may not start with the same views and assumptions, but share values of caring for our town and its current and future residents. Those kind of conversations can be stopped in their tracks by demonization, by lumping people together and making generalizations, and by complaining indirectly instead of going direct to the people you're having issues with. So, Mr. Chair, let me practice this going direct thing. I get that you and many others were deeply hurt and offended by things said about you, especially in a couple of closed Facebook groups. When at our meeting last Monday, you picked out the names of 5 people in those groups and called them liars, and then called our state senator a coward for not calling these folks up, I felt shocked and scared, as if you had just pulled the pin out of a grenade and tossed it on the floor. My assessment then and now was that those statements were harmful to the work we're trying to do here. Unlike people in a closed Facebook group, we've been elected to be in an open meeting trying to do work for the people of Acton. I think that your comments to this board and the public were unhelpful, inappropriate, hurtful, and in the case of some of those you named, untrue. Because your actions were public, I felt it was incumbent on us as board members to make our initial response publicly as well. I know that healing a rift like this is not easy and it won't be finished in a public meeting. So I look forward to talking with you privately whenever you're ready.
I'm happy to do that later this week.
Good, great.
Let's meet.
Yep. Now, I get the irony that I'm describing our chair doing things that in turn the chair is accusing others of doing, and I don't know exactly how the cycle of accusation stops and where the work of useful dialogue begins. But I have some practices that I'll seek to adhere to in my behavior here as an elected official that I recommend for us all. In Acton, accusatory sentences that include they are almost always a sign of something going off the rails. Therefore, while I'm here, I won't claim to know the motives, thoughts, or intentions of any group of people. If I have problems with what people are doing, I'll speak to individuals directly, find a way we can be safe in talking to each other, tell them my thoughts on how what they are doing is harmful, and listen respectfully to their response. I'll take every conversation that I can as an opportunity to learn and change. When I feel myself getting reactive and wanting to either lash out or go hide, I'll keep using some simple ways to bring myself back to a centered place. And I recommend these practices to everyone, but especially to my fellow board members and elected officials. Finally, there's 4 rays of hope for dialogue that I wanted to call out. The Braver Angels debate and discussion, which is scheduled for Sunday, May 2nd at 4 o'clock. This event will feature both supporters and opponents of the recent decision to stop using the name Colonials for our high school sports team. It's facilitated by the Braver Angels organization, who are experts at creating educational dialogue on issues where temperatures are running high. Second, the work of our school and town staffs to bring together leaders in a quiet space where they can listen to each other without anyone egging them on to polarized positions. This is the work being done by the folks from Visions Incorporated. Third, the ongoing and amazing work of the Acton-Boxborough United Way in fostering dialogue and education across all sorts of divisions. And finally, I wanted to celebrate that last week we got to hear from a multiracial coalition advocating that one of the new purposes for the Asa Parlin House, currently sitting empty next to the town hall parking area, might be as a cultural center, to bring awareness to all of the different cultures that make up our great town of Acton. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Joan?
Yeah, I'd just like to remind everybody that tomorrow night the planning board is holding a hearing on the drive-up window issue, town meeting.
Okay. David?
I have several little things. So I took a tour of the new school building site again as a school building committee member. Things are progressing really well there. I would say that the steel in the building is maybe 40% complete. That's not an official number. Some of the concrete floors are poured, and there's probably a little bit more than a month left to do the rest of the steel, and then they'll finish pouring the floors and starting to put up the exterior walls. The DEIC is very close to releasing its survey. There were a few hiccups in releasing it earlier this week. We're repairing those and probably will get it out again soon. And at the 53 River Street site, the dam site, the archaeological investigation is underway by the consultant we have there. They're using some ground penetrating radar and also digging in certain places of the site to see what might be there. That's all.
Dean?
Thank you. Couple of items. I've been monitoring pretty closely the progress on the new North Acton Fire Station. As a member of the committee, it's a good committee because I don't have to show up. I can just look at the pictures and read all the minutes. And that seems to be going very nicely. It's a long-awaited project. And I expect that it's probably going to be done on time, probably in October. So I would certainly like to extend an invitation to Joan and John, who won't be on the board anymore, to show up for the as honored guests at whatever ribbon cutting operation we have there, because I know both of you work very hard. Joan actually made sort of a generational commitment towards it, I would think. So I think, that's a really good piece of progress, and I'm really happy to see how it's going. On my liaison position with the Community Preservation Committee, we had a long meeting last week. We're close to consensus on almost all of the items except two, which there's still considerable debate about both the dog park and Gardner Field. We're going to be meeting again next week, and hopefully we can come to some resolution of that. But it's been a long and grueling process because there are a lot of really good projects out there and not enough money. And it's important that everybody realize that CPC really is a board and committee unto itself. The folks there will take their positions and their duties and responsibilities very seriously, and certainly welcome input from other folks, but ultimately the decisions, the recommendations by statute will come from CPC and go to town meeting. So certainly the select board can be involved in advocating one way or another, or other groups might come before the select board, but ultimately this decision is going to be made by the CPC and ultimately the voters of Acton. Next, the other night last night, I attended a really excellent presentation done by Doug Herrick and Bill Clower of the Historical Society, entitled A History of Acton. And they noted that they called it A History of Acton because there are many histories of Acton, depending upon your point of view and what you want to accentuate. It was a great presentation. It's going to be available, I believe, on YouTube channel that is hosted by the Jenks Library at the Historical Society. And I recommend that people take a look at that. It really puts a lot of things into context. And towards the end, Doug Herrick did a nice presentation and some slides about the various waves of immigrants that have come into town over the years, starting with, folks that we don't even think about, the Swedes and the Norwegians who have become so mainstream, and that was a significant influx into town, the Irish, the Italians. And it points out how Acton has always been receptive to various groups coming into town. Each group brings its own background, history, traditions. They bring it into the town, it gets absorbed, and it becomes mainstream. And I think that same sort of thing is happening with the various immigrant groups that have moved into town in the last 25 years. It continues. So I think, the diversity of the town is really important. People get a kick out of me being the old white guy, the Yankee that's been here for 6 or 7 generations and probably wish the town still had only 2,000 people in it. And there are times when that looks attractive, but on the other hand, I can tell you from my experience that this is a much more interesting and vibrant community than it was when I was in elementary school and in high school. The town has grown tremendously, and we've all benefited from all of the groups that have moved into town. And, the latest groups coming through, the Chinese and South Asian communities and the Hispanics moving in, they're all going to be brought into the fabric, and then there'll be another group that will come in. The town will just continue to evolve. And frankly, I'm very hopeful. I think the town gets better. So that brings me to the last point about, the rancor that has gone on for the last few months here. And I'll admit to the fact that I've not had a good night's sleep in quite some time, because it's just, everybody is so much at each other's throats. Kind of comments are made by folks, the assumptions are made by folks. The otherwise well-meaning people that just seem to be talking past one another. The anecdote that John Benson relayed about standing outside the polling place a few weeks ago, he neglected one point to the comment that was made about being at civil war and, not wanting to stand by the enemy. It was indeed John Benson there, and it was Juan Kong. And Juan, I actually was able to get Juan Kong to join the Acton Lions Club with me, which he was flattered to be invited, and I was flattered that he accepted. But I was there too. And I heard those comments. And that's the sort of irresponsible comment that people make that is regrettable. And it doesn't advance things at all. And I'm sure that at some point or another, I've probably said a few things that people have objected to as well. And I certainly apologize for those inadvertent comments that I made, but it shows how polarized the town has been. We've got a great town manager here, and I'm more hopeful about the future of this town than I've been pretty much in my entire career. And I've worked for about 7 different town managers. And I'm still working for this guy, although it doesn't show that in the organizational chart. But I think with the vision that he's got, and Mr. Mangiarotti is in the really unenviable position of trying to appease everybody and ride herd on us, trying to guide us, and trying to advance the operation and not getting involved in the muck of the politics. And I applaud him for that. He's certainly, maybe it's because he's the younger generation, I don't know, but he certainly seems tolerant and calm most of the time. So I think that's important. I think it's important that the town look at moving forward. And I hope that over the next few months, we can all do that. Those of us that are going to remain on the board and those of us that are going to leave the board and the new folks that are coming on. I hope that we can get together and find some common ground and, just back off the rhetoric, calm down, take a breath. Lots of times I don't agree with the things that David said or Jim said, or probably certainly what John said. Joan just scares me, so I always agree with her. But I think it's important for all of us just to take a breath and take a little bit more distance with these things, and hopefully we can get over this. And better things are coming this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dane. Well done. Okay, moving forward to item 3, COVID-19 response updates. John, please.
Thank you. So here we are, 13 months almost to the day into the response activities to this pandemic. Vaccinations are becoming readily available, which is encouraging, although the recent spike has not subsided. We're still in the high 30s as of today or yesterday in terms of cases. The exact number of cases in town I can give you in a second. But with that in mind, we're also very prepared as an organization to start reintroducing services to the public. We understand how to keep ourselves safe and the public safe, and we're looking forward to that opportunity. Last week, we discussed with the board a tentative May 3rd reintroducing public spaces, interior public spaces to the members of the public, and we're still on track to do that. And I'm encouraged. I think, there's a lot more people in town hall today than there has been in a year. And I think people are looking forward to seeing the public again. As I said before, we're here to serve the public, and doing it remotely is not the way it was intended to be. So we look forward to that. Other items, just trying to get that number, sorry. The total of 910 to date. April 19th is a date that anyone over 16 is eligible for a vaccine. So I encourage people to start making appointments now if you haven't already, and everybody should consider vaccination as a way to protect themselves and their loved ones and everyone else. We have no update on our plans to hold a public vaccination site here. We did hear some preliminary feedback from the DPH, and they wanted to talk to us, and that meeting is still being scheduled. So I hope to have a report on that at the board's next meeting later this month. And we're poised and ready to administer it if given the approval to do so. That concludes my COVID updates, unless there are any questions or comments on what's happening.
Any questions for John on the COVID updates? Okay. Item 4, back to John. The board to approve the manager's FY22 municipal budget. Would you like to open, John?
Thank you. So, because of the pandemic, the board voted a few months ago to postpone town meeting, and as a result, the whole budget timeline was modified, and it's created some interesting timing challenges, and that compounded with the fact that we put out a 10-year plan in the middle of it, made for a pretty complex budget process this year. But I'm very excited for the feedback that we've received preliminarily from the budget that was first presented on March 1st. It was discussed again a few times in March. We had our joint budget workshop with the Finance Committee and the Select Board last week on the 6th, and there was some very interesting questions and outstanding performances from our department and division heads to describe the services they provide. And overall, I think there's been a lot of positive feedback. So the next step in this process is for the board to consider formally approving the budget as recommended, and from there it would be transmitted to the Finance Committee for it to deliberate before it makes a recommendation to town meeting. So since the budget was first presented, there was one minor change that I've made that the board supported, and that was to increase the capital program by $26,000. I'm sorry, by $21,000. Everything else remained as it was presented in the March 1st budget book. But I'm asking the board tonight to consider formally adopting the town's operating budget, which for FY22 municipal operations and subsidies together is $36,992,835, with a proposed capital program that will add an additional $814,997 for a total municipal operating budget of $37,807,832, and this amount amounts to a 2.56% increase over the FY21 budget that was approved by town meeting. And I appreciate the board's support in developing this budget. There's a lot of things that we're advancing in this recommended budget, both board priorities and community goals that have come up since the board's goal setting. And they're all outlined in detail in the March 1st budget book. And I look forward to the opportunity to take some of those things forward if the board approves us doing so.
Is there any discussion from board members? Jim?
Since this is my first time through this process as a board member, and I've been there as a, as a person in the audience before, I just wanted to note how much more information there was in the budget book, the very clearly laid out full-time equivalents and the org charts. It was a real opportunity to learn about how the different departments work. And you've answered all my questions. I would certainly wish that there were that despite your very aggressive and I think appropriate attempt to add more hybrid and electric vehicles, I of course would want even more. But I think I have no concerns about approving this budget as far as bringing it forward to the finance committee and ultimately town meeting.
Thank you. Dean, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, two quick questions for the manager, and I certainly second the words that Jim has come up with. This is just a massive budget book as far as background and information, and it's really, it's like a primer for local government. If anybody is having trouble sleeping. Two questions, Mr. Manager. At one point, you're advocating $30,000 for a tree assessment. Could you give us some details on what's involved with that?
Yes. Generally, in the last 10 years, there was an assessment done of trees, and this would basically be a 3-year project to update that. Look at all the street trees and publicly owned trees, so it's $30,000 over 3 years, and all we're asking for is the first $30,000 this year, and it would just provide a condition and recommendation for how to manage those trees for us to then use our internal tree department resources to try to accomplish.
And I presume this would be something going out to bid. You'd bring in a consulting arborist to do this work?
Yes, this would be for a consultant. Yes.
Okay. I'll just note for the rest of the board that that's sort of the previous term they used, where sometimes they call these things tree inventories, and they're really considered to be best practices in the larger towns and cities. Because there is such a resource available there, and it's very tough to keep track of all these things in the back of your mind. So I'd certainly support this. And where you note, Mr. Manager, about public trees, I presume that this would also include pretty significant trees we have, like in our cemeteries and recreation areas, where we've got a nice collection of trees there, plus substantial liability. So I hope that at some phase, those public areas would be included in the survey and not focus just on street trees. My second question is, I know there was a question raised by folks in the Finance Committee specifically about the Kelly's Corner project and the cost of the proposed pedestrian style street lighting. And do you have any thoughts you'd like to share with us on that, Mr. Manager?
Yes, thank you. So the request that was submitted by the planning, by Kristen Guichard, who runs that project internally for us, was for $981,000. And that was submitted during the capital needs assessment. We've since completed the 100% design. And so the number of 981,000 now includes enough for about a 10% contingency, which a project at 100%, you know, even though construction prices and material prices are through the roof, we would hope that we wouldn't need 10% of contingency to complete a project like that. So I do believe that there is an opportunity to not spend $981,000. First of all, second of all, I think that the project was designed with a very collaborative community engagement process over, I want to say years, but I think it may have been longer than that. And there's a certain aesthetic that people that really advocate for this project, people on the Kelly's Corner Steering Committee, the Select Board, Finance Committee at previous town meetings, and many people who supported this project wanted Kelly's Corner to be a place that you drive to, not a place that you drive through. And I think having pedestrian scale streetlights create a sense of place. And whether, you know, the amount that we're proposing is, you know, if we could take 2 or 3 off of them and still have that aesthetic, I think that's a discussion we can have. But I think to have a whole scale change in the plan would be inconsistent with what the community and many others who support this project want to see there. So I understand that it is a big number. I was pretty shocked myself when I first heard it, but I think if you look at what everything costs with a $17 million project that the state's going to be paying for, it's in a relative context. And you know, in the budget book that was produced, there's a quote from the chair of the Kelly's Corner Steering Committee, which I can try to read, or I encourage people to check out. But it very nicely lays out the reasons that these lights are integral to the project. So, did I address your question?
You did indeed. I agree with your comments. You know, I was sort of a latecomer onto the Kelly's Corner Committee, and I was kind of skeptical about, you know, $1 million for lights. But the more you got into it, and you realized that the total impact of lighting on the project and the importance of it, and how it's really going to dress the area up and really create a more walkable environment for people to you know, go over there in the evenings. So I personally fully support whatever needs to get done to get proper lighting down there and to, you know, bring the project to fruition. And we've got so much state aid there. This is such a heavily leveraged project. I think that, you know, the amount of money that we'd be putting in for the lighting and some of the other amenities is really very minor. So I would support that. You know, and my final comment is just congratulations to the manager for the nice budget he put together, and certainly, you know, certainly it's important from my point of view, the interest in trees and the natural environment, the support for that sort of thing. I'm certainly very pleased with that. And the fact that the manager has moved ahead with a lot of the other sustainability initiatives that people have been asking for. I think, you know, you've been very responsive, both in what you've done so far this year and certainly what you propose. So I definitely will vote in favor of the budget the way it is.
David?
Yes, several things. I wanted to thank the town manager for his fiscal management during the past year, especially during the pandemic. You know, kind of reinventing how the town works without, you know, going off the rails. Just really an excellent job. Also, I agree with what Dean just said on the budget, keeping the budget to about 2.5% increase, and you know the work all the department heads did on well, just kind of being very, very efficient with their operations. You know, keeping most of our initiatives on track with, you know, basically no operational you know increases from, you know, last year to this year. And the you know, part of this budget is the capital improvement plan, which is really an excellent document along with the budget document. I agree with Jim's and Dean's comments earlier that the budget book this year was much more usable and easier to, you know, get information out of than last year's. And so, you know, there was some critique there, and you took that to heart, and that was great, and it was really good. But the capital improvement plan really adds to that. You know, that's going to be something that I reference, you know, a number of times through the coming year. And finally, with regard to the street lighting, I'm in favor of the street lighting. I think it's important to have that aesthetic, that sense of place, you know, in Kelly's Corner. And I think it's important to do the project right, considering that it's going to last for decades. You know, this is not something which is going to last for 5 years or something. So I believe that it's really important there. Thank you.
Jim.
Since we're talking about the streetlights, one of the things I remember from the process of being involved in sort of reviewing the development of the plan, one of the purposes of the streetlights is as a traffic calming measure at night, so that when the traffic is light and cars are traveling at speed, when they reach an area that has low lights that are clearly pedestrian lights, it's a signal. It says, whoa, there's people here, potentially, be careful, slow down. It's much more effective than, you know, just having a little sign with a number on it, which doesn't seem to impact people's speeds very much. You need clues about, you know, what's supposed to happen. It's the same thing that the trees are doing during the day. They're providing an enclosure that tells drivers unconsciously, oh, this we're approaching a zone where I have to share the area with humans. You know, be careful.
Yeah, Jim, beyond the budget book, which was the best I've ever seen, but I've been to any number of budget workshops with the Finance Committee over the years. They were called Budget Saturdays. What was absolutely sensational was the top-notch presentations of the department heads and their staff in really explaining what it is that each department and the working groups within the department or the branches of the department divisions do that you know, really you know, cut down on a lot of you know, of questions. And you know, they should be, you know, all of our staff should be just, you know, just really commended for the work that they did. And you know, they were just well prepared and delivered it extremely well. And you know, that was a treat to all of us. Joan.
Yeah, I move that the town manager's budget is presented in the budget book.
Okay, so that would be, you know, just for the record, it would be for the town manager's budget consisting of municipal operations, subsidies to enterprise funds, and recommended capital totaling $807,832 be approved. Would you move that? So it's clear. Yes, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, David, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Charter,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
and I say aye. So the budget should not adopted unanimously.
Good work, John.
Good work. John, just one suggestion beyond that. I think it's important that you and Kristen and Andy Brockway get on the FinCom's agenda and explain the full pedestrian lighting and, why.
We will do that. That's a good suggestion. And thank you to the board for supporting this budget and for your leadership throughout the whole process so far. So thanks.
Thank you. And the next item would be discuss deadline for submitting nominations for Volunteer of the Year and date when the awards will be publicly announced. Jim, this would be the first year of your participation. This is an award. It's the I think it's the Colonel Franklin Faulkner Award. He was one of our predecessors on this board, and it's award for exemplary volunteer service to the town. The effort was spearheaded by Peter Berry in the 2017-2018 cycle. Each member gets to nominate one person who will be one of the 5 award recipients for the year. You could typically you would look at your liaison committees and pick some individual, although you're not required to, off of that group of people. My experience with it, this will be my 4th nomination, is how appreciative, deeply appreciated the recipients are. Very honored by it. They have brought family members to the ceremony. You would get as a member to introduce the member, reviewing the background, why the person received the award, and they would have an opportunity to speak. And hopefully we'll be able to do it safely outdoors in May, properly distanced. So I could, when you and I get together later in the week, I could talk to you more about the award. If you want to talk to Peter Berry, the award's creator, but he will underscore the word exemplary service. So with that in mind, and looking to a May date to have the award ceremony, do you think that we could all have our nominations together in 2 weeks by our April 26th meeting, or would you like an additional week beyond that of May 3rd? So Jim, you're okay. April 26th, would that be good?
Can I just ask a clarifying?
Sure.
Are we announcing them then, or are we just having them into the manager's office by then?
Well, why don't we have it done by them, and we could submit them to the manager, and then it's I think the way we do it is each select board member would notify his or her nominee. But I think we could work backwards if we could agree, if John could come up with a good date for the ceremony, we could fill in the details of the public announcements and when we reach out to the recipients.
Okay, so we would have our nominations to, the manager's office by the 26th, but they're not going to be used at the meeting on the 26th, right? Just for my clarification, right?
Yeah, Joan, you are the senior member on when.
Yeah, no, they aren't announced until that day.
So it's really more or less I'll just in general terms, we want them to the town manager's office by the end of the month, really. And
Yeah.
then at sometime in May, we have the ceremony, probably virtual.
But you will, well ahead of the ceremony, notify the recipient.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of joy in it.
It used to be the case that they would have to come, but I mean, physically come.
Well, we had Anne Chang in Europe one year, so that was different. Dean,
Yeah, if I just asked the town manager if you could get Lisa Tommel to send us the list of the people who have received the award in the past. That would be very helpful, so that I had an issue with that the last time. But, that we've got some people that everybody really like, So who's gotten the award? That'd be great.
That would be definitely really helpful. I was thinking of getting together some names and asking Lisa, but it would be easier to go the other way.
okay, so we're all good at getting our nominations to John by the 26th, 2 weeks from now. And then, John, we could work on, if you could select a date, we could then work backwards from there.
Yeah, Lisa's already doing some work on potential venue, something for the board to consider. We have had a few ceremonies outdoors over the last year, and we certainly could consider that here if the board wants to do that. To keep numbers down, it could be invite only to the family members of the people, but that's something to discuss. And Lisa's already working on that. A virtual meeting would be much easier to set up, so we could do that anytime.
And are we going to discuss those logistics at the next meeting?
Let's look to see if we John, if Lisa could pull that together by the 26th, we could put it on the agenda and
discuss whether we're going to have a virtual meeting or an invite meeting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Then number 6 is to discuss the date of the Volunteer of the Year reception. John?
Well, that's actually the topic we just discussed. We're having on the 26th. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. So,
is the Volunteer of the Year that's for the staff? No, I'm sorry. Are you talking about? No, it's the same thing. I thought your staff.
Yeah. So the agenda may be confusing, and I apologize for that. But the intent of that would be to start looking at dates for the ceremony that we just talked about. But I think it makes sense to do it on the 26th, as was just suggested, if everybody's comfortable with that.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we'll put it on for the 26th to discuss the date that we'll do it, and if Lisa could give us options on logistics, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so our last new special business item, update the CARES Act request funds and request to fund the AB Regional School District Community Food Program.
Yes, thank you. So we received a request from the Regional School District to help fund the program that they've been running, I think, at least for a year now, which has been providing food to families, not just school families, but any families that's in need. They run it out of the food services kitchen. And I think since they've come back to school, they're still doing it, even though they're now, I think, providing more food to kids. They're also still doing it to the families. But before we get to that memo from Finance Director from the school district, Dave Bernalino, I wanted to just give the board a quick update on where we are to date with the CARES money. As you know, in January or last year, we received $2.09 million in federal CARES Act funds, and through authorizations of the board over the last year, we've committed just over 1.6 million of that, and it's broken down as follows: 160,000 for rental and mortgage assistance programs, which Laura Ducharme has been running in collaboration with the RHSO. Those programs have been vital to many, many people in need in the community. And I do know that there is an interest in trying to find a way to continue that, which is something that I can bring back to the board another day. There's also been a lot of funding allocated for that purpose in the new American Rescue Plan. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens with that as well. Other items include more than $500,000 for public safety related costs such as overtime, PPE, decontamination costs, the whole remote working infrastructure that the IT group rolled out very quickly. That's part of the $500,000. Our virtual meeting coordinator, who's with us tonight, Matt Murphy. Thank you, CARES funds, for funding Matt's time with us, and that's going to continue as long as it can. And several other things related to facility improvements to make fresh air exchange more feasible. We've also to date awarded $866,000 to ABRSD as a sub-grantee for a group of projects that they brought forward and the board approved over the summer or recently. We have some provisional costs that we're anticipating more of the above that I just mentioned, the PPE and the decontamination costs. We're still trying to acquire a little bit more technology licensing, and we're actually at the 1-year renewal part for all this stuff that we purchased, like all these Zoom. We didn't have any Zoom licenses. Now we have who knows how many, and where our 1-year renewal is probably up, so we're gonna have to pay more for that now. So there's costs that we have, and when it's all said and done, the total amount of totally unobligated funding in CARES that we have is just around $180,000. And that's those, some of these costs that I mentioned, they haven't been finalized yet and they're provisional. So we may have a little bit more than 180,000, but based on analysis that finance did with us earlier, we know that we have at least 180,000 uncommitted, which brings us to the request of the school district, which was in the packet. And I anticipated that there may be some questions about the programming, and Dave Verlino did a nice job of responding to those questions in advance, and that information is also in the packet. The request that they are seeking is for, let's see here, what was it? Sorry. So they spent about 100,000, and they asked us to cover our portion according to the our normal assessments, which is 85,220, and that would cover the costs that they've incurred since May 2020. I would assume it's through. I mean, they're still incurring costs now, but I believe this. Oh yeah, that's through February. So that's basically the request. I'm not sure what that feedback is. Is that me? Sorry about that if it is. So the request is 85,000 to help support the community meals. I think I have a statistic in here of how many they've provided, which is pretty. 200,000 meals provided to families in need in the community as part of this program. And so that is the request before you. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the board may have on this.
Questions, comments from board members on the request? Okay, so would there be a motion to allocate the sum of $85,220 from our remaining CARES funds to the Acton Boxborough School District to support the community meals program?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. David, if you call the roll, please.
Yep. Mr. Snyder Grant,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Charter,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
and I say aye.
Thank you. Thank you for your support, and we will work with the district to transfer that over there and help support that program. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have just two consent items as our final piece of business. Consent item 9, accept gift veteran services for $1,000 from Orion Industries to help assist Acton veterans and surviving spouses of veterans. 10, accept gift recreation department for $10 from Bridget Brady towards constructing a dog park in Acton. So if there's no discussion, Joe?
Move to,
Yeah.
Can I just ask if, are we skipping item 8?
Yes, John had asked that we take that off. It was not ready.
Fine. Just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah,
okay, move to approve the consent items.
items 9 and 10. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, David, you call the roll, please?
Mr. Snyder Grant,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Charter,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.
I say aye.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes our business. We'll meet again on Monday, 2 weeks from now, Monday, April 26th at 7 o'clock, and we'll see you all then. Jim, I'll be in touch with you about getting together.
Good. Rest well, everybody.
Okay,
Move
see you
to,
soon.
move to adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second,
Second, okay. David, call the roll, please.
Mr. Snyder Grant,
Aye.
Ms. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Charter,
Aye.
Mr. Benson,
Aye.